Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 548 for the 21st of April 2019. Happy birthday to you if it's your birthday today. And a big happy birthday to Jim Wilshire, the original voiceover man for the Skeptic Zone, who has been introducing the show now, via his audio file, of course, for over 10 years. Happy birthday, Jim. Coming up on this week's show, we interview Professor Dave Farina from California, from Los Angeles, is known as Professor Dave. He does a series of online videos, tutorials on YouTube, and what brought him to my attention was a particularly good video he did deconstructing the arguments from the flat earthers, or the globe busters in this case. Now, Dave made a video originally about the flat earth and conspiracies and things like that. These globe busters then took it upon themselves to try to debunk what Dave said. And Dave looked at that and deconstructed what they said, point by point, like a surgeon. It's really worth watching. Of course, links in this week's show notes. But coming up at the top of the show, we talk to Professor Dave. Following that, we have a short report published by Jane Hansen about a naturopath who has been banned by providing any healthcare services by the Healthcare Complaints Commission. Then an interview from the Canberra Skeptics with Kristine Dun, who looks at sporting superstitions. Why is it that some sporting figures like to maybe have a particular coloured handkerchief about their person when they're on the field, or they may delay their entry after all the other players have gone to the field, or they have to have a phone call from somebody, or so on. And when can this start to be detrimental to their performance? Then we delve back into the pages of the Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics, and this week a report, a story, an item by Dr. Steve Roberts, an old friend of the Skeptic Zone, Flying Sorcery, Searching the Skies for Evidence of UFOs and a History of Hoaxes. And to round off the show, we chat to Maynard about his upcoming Maynard's Loveshack 2. Now, don't forget, apart from being our reporter, Maynard is one of Sydney's top DJs, and he's going to be having another night in Glebe here in Sydney on the 4th of May, Maynard's Loveshack 2. We find out more about that. Stay tuned at the end of the show for more announcements from me. I wonder if that bird outside's going to be quiet. I don't know, folks. Sometimes I have to sit here and wait for planes to go away, because I live near the airport. But this morning, maybe it's this time of the year, I don't know, there are the weird birds outside. Let's see if we can hear one. Well, that's typical, isn't it? I wanted to record a funny bird, but I think a plane's coming over. It's one of the great mysteries of life. While I ponder this, while having some waffles with maple syrup, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Joining me now on the line all the way from beautiful Los Angeles, California, it's Dave Farina, known as Professor Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm doing really well, thanks. I'm doing well because just last week, in fact, I discovered a video you produced, which we'll talk about in a minute, about the flat earth and flat earthers. And that impressed me so much I had to find out more. But before we get into that, can you give our audience a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. I run a YouTube channel called Professor Dave Explains. It's just a bunch of educational tutorials. They're more or less curriculum aligned, so they're really for students that are studying chemistry or physics or math, wide variety of topics. And I just sort of, give them the Cliff's Notes of their textbook, little lectures that help them with their classes. Is pretty much what I do.
And what's your background generally, education-wise?
So I did a bachelor's in chemistry, and then I started to do master's work in organic chemistry. I didn't quite finish that. The research didn't really work out. I was doing some other things at the time. Eventually went back and did a master's in science education. So definitely sort of transitioned away from science and more into sci-comm. So I'm definitely a full-time science communicator and a generalist, I would call myself now, although my expertise is chemistry. But I spend more of my time trying to learn biology and physics and astronomy and all of these other topics to try to offer as wide a variety of tutorials as I can on my channel.
I was just about to bring up this topic because when I was reviewing your YouTube channel, I'm quite struck by the sheer range of topics you cover.
Yeah.
All sorts of sciences, astronomy, chemistry, biology, I've noticed. And then I was looking and thought, hello, Italian?
Yep. That's an interesting one. So I'm Italian by blood. My parents were Italian immigrants. And so I learned the language reasonably well growing up, but my mother is an Italian professor. She's been teaching undergrads Italian for like 40 years. So I just thought, hey, what if she would kind of give me her curriculum and help me structure the tutorials? So it's basically her curriculum, and I just sort of adapted it to my format. So that way she gets videos to show her students, and I get this great Italian content. I don't want to pretend that that's all me there, because I speak pretty well, but all the grammar and stuff I don't quite have the command of that it seems on the videos. But I knew that I could pronounce everything very well, so I just thought it would work out. So.
Well, you don't want to give away too many secrets there, Dave. We'll all just pretend that you're a master at all of these things. And just quickly, I mean, you call yourself Professor Dave, which is a great hook. It's a great moniker, I think. But, of course, you're not a real professor in that sense, are you?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. When I made the channel, it was tongue-in-cheek. It was just sort of like a little persona. I mean, I did teach organic chemistry for a number of years to some post-backs. So I don't know if it depends on your definition of a professor, but I taught
yes.
undergraduate material for a number of years. So I don't know. It's interesting, though, because I do get called out on that from time to time. And I'm just like, you guys, Professor Dave, no one calls themselves that seriously. Also, I have a dozen different subjects on my channel. I don't know if anyone would presume that I have a PhD in 12 different PhDs, but I mean, it's a YouTube channel, guys. I don't know. I just thought, it's like if there wasn't Bill Nye the Science Guy, I probably would have been Dave the Science Guy, but that was taken.
Right.
So I needed another little thing,
I think it's great. I mean, it's a great little hook, and it sounds funny and it sounds good. And people, when you look at Dave's videos online, I don't want to say you do it tongue-in-cheek, but it's happy, it's friendly, it's engaging, and there's a little theme tune and a little cartoon character of you. So it's all very... Right. I think it's a wonderful approach. Now, before we get on to the Flat Earth topic, which I want to talk to you about, one of the things that I notice that you talk about quite a lot in your videos or cover is physics and the types of energy, potential energy, kinetic energy, and all this sort of thing. And this struck a chord with me because in the skeptical movement, we are constantly hearing from the New Agers the word energy. And they have no idea what they mean when they say energy. To them, energy means anything from happy feelings to mystical forces unknown to science. Do you ever come across that yourself?
Absolutely. I think energy is one of the most misused words in the common language today, possibly the most, right along with theory. Theory is another one that I think every day it boils my blood. But energy, it's tough because it it began to be used in a metaphorical sense, right? This person has good energy, this room has good energy, or something like that. And what has happened with the quantum mysticism movement is they have begun to literalize that metaphorical usage of the word, and it just runs everyone into all these problems because they try to use science to back up what is essentially a metaphor, So yeah, I agree completely with your assessment of that word.
Oh yeah, we hear this all the time. Buy this product, whatever it happens to be, to help you remove negative energies. You can clear your room of negative energies. We hear this all the time. And my friend Brian Dunning over at the Skeptoid podcast did a video, over 10 years now, called Here Be Dragons, I think that's the name of it, where he talks about this exact problem. I mean, the New Agers seem to think that energy is something like a Star Trek force.
It's magic. It's a code word for whatever magic they want to promote. Vibration is another one they like to use.
Oh yeah,
because atoms vibrate, so it is a real thing. But then they just say, you have a bad vibration or a good vibration. Mm-hmm. They just sort of extend actual scientific words into pseudoscientific territory, where it just becomes a slippery slope, essentially.
It certainly does. The one we hear all the time is we're going to raise the vibrations. But let's talk about the video which really caught my attention. I think it simply came up in my YouTube recommendations feed last week. And it was the second video you did where you were, it's a bit of a story, you were rebutting a video that was made about you where you originally made a video about Flat Earth. Can you please take us through that interesting tale?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to tell you the tale. It's very interesting because this is not really my world. I consider myself a skeptic, but I'm not in the world of debunking. I'm in the world of just academic tutorials. And so what I did was I was wrapping up an astronomy series. I had done an astronomy series taking everyone through cosmology and, the formation of the solar system, stellar life cycle, looking at each planet in the solar system, just really basic academic astronomy 101 stuff. And sometimes to wrap up a series, I like to do a couple of little popular topics. Like for modern physics, I did like the future of space travel, just something that I thought maybe would get a few more hits. And so I did one on astrology and I did one on flat Earth. And my flat Earth video was I didn't peer into the flat Earth community at all. I just made a video demonstrating how we know the Earth is round. It was really just contextualizing lessons from earlier in the series, and I did not anticipate that video would the day of release go to the #1 search result for the flat Earth keyword, and so all the flat Earthers found it. The Globe Busters decided to pick it apart in a 3.5-hour live stream, and were extremely rude to me in doing so. And it's funny because if they were not so rude, I probably would have ignored them. But they were so rude, and I'm a very stubborn and vindictive fellow. So I decided that I needed to make a 45-minute video deconstructing their live stream to make them look as stupid as humanly possible, I think was the main thing. But also what it was is that now that they criticized me for misrepresenting their model, which was true because I did not look at their model at all. And so, I just figured, all right, let me just do one thing here of picking apart their model as they presented it to me. And that's what I did. So I had a lot of fun doing it. I'm certainly going to link directly to Professor Dave's YouTube channel, but I would particularly point out, folks, that you watch the range of videos, the two videos where Dave talks about the flat Earth. The second one in particular is a wonderful surgical takedown point by point of the points made about your original video. It's from a skeptical point of view, it's joy, sit back with a bottle of champagne and really enjoy it. And you also taught me a lot of things, I must say, when I watched the second video, as you deconstructed their criticism of you. It certainly taught me a lot of interesting science about the Earth, because sadly, we're getting this more and more often. More and more people seem to be jumping onto the flat Earth, as it were. Yeah, it's a bit disturbing. To be honest, now that I have just sort of been wading through this muck for a little bit, I'm starting to become a little bit more familiar with this flat Earth community, and I'm starting to realize the extent to which it is more of a cult than anything. And so
yeah,
I'm extremely convinced that figures such as the Globebusters do not believe the Earth is flat, and instead are just profiting off of their content, and I'm not sure the extent to which the followers believe it either. Obviously, some do, but there's talk of psyops and paid trolls and all these things, and I'm just like, wow, I need to get back to my regular content because this is crazy. But even just this little bit of time and managing the comment section on that one video has really opened my eyes to the deceit that is going on. It's not genuine, it's not genuine inquiry going on over there, no matter how misled,
That's really interesting. That's a very interesting point of view, because in my experience over, around about 20 years, I certainly know there are a lot of people in any New Age idea, and we can broadly put this into a New Age idea or conspiracy idea, who genuinely believe it. Thousands of people out there, I would put to you, absolutely and sincerely believe the world is flat, and that they're fighting the big global. They're fighting the global conspiracy, you might say.
So. Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, I'm really curious to know, being a video producer myself and obviously an audio producer, I'm very curious to know what your process is for making the videos. How do you obviously write the script, I guess, and do you have a little studio for filming? How do you go about that?
So I am extremely fortunate in that living in Los Angeles, I have access to YouTube studios. There are about a dozen of these locations around the world. Actually, I think there's one in Sydney. Is there not?
That's a good question. I'd have to look into that. There could well be.
I think I forget exactly which cities have them, but there is one in Los Angeles, and to anyone over a certain number of subscribers, the facilities are made available for free. So pretty quickly, it took about a year to get enough subscribers to get that access, but I got there pretty quickly, and so for 3+ years, I've just been, I batch write the scripts. I just write a lot of scripts for a few weeks. And then I just, I get one of the rooms at YouTube. I get one of the green screen rooms over at YouTube Studios here in Los Angeles for a day or 2 days, sometimes 3 days, 12-hour days. I hire someone to run camera and monitor audio, and I just run through these scripts, like 100, 150 of them, real rapid fire. Then I take it all home, and I spend about 3 months editing and animating.
Okay, so you do the editing and then the post-animation yourself. And
it's all me over here.
Wow. And in the studio, is there an auto cue situation for you?
Oh, you mean like a teleprompter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I use a teleprompter, like the real deal, the kind of thing where when you look at it, you're flabbergasted that it even works, because there's like a one-way mirror, and it projects the mirror image of the words that you're going to you're looking at words where the lens is. The first time I saw it, I was fascinated by it, but now I'm used to it. I've been using it for years, but it's been great practice. I'm very good at reading prompter now, so.
I'm not surprised. Well, look, folks, there's the clue for you all. No matter if you're a student or somebody like me, who is been interested in science education and basically just learning about science, Professor Dave explains is a wide-ranging field for you to enjoy. Everything from cosmology to chemistry to even learning Italian. It's all there for you. And we'll certainly link to all those, or it's really just one link in the show notes. It's primarily a YouTube channel, Dave, but you also have a presence on Facebook, I think.
Yeah, I'm on all the socials. I don't know how well I curate them, but they're there. So,
yes, because I also noticed I came across a podcast you did talking about the problem with the anti-vaxxers. Yes,
so I do have a podcast. It doesn't have an extremely solid listenership yet, but I'm still, I've been plugging away. I release one monthly. It's called Professor Dave Debates, and each episode is topic specific. So we did one on Flat Earth, did one on anti-vax. I just try to find experts, and we talk for about an hour about what they know.
There you go. It's all there, folks, and I'll link to that as well in this week's show notes. Well, Professor Dave Farina, all the way there in Los Angeles, California, thank you very much for all the time and the effort for what you do. I'm certainly learning a lot, and I'm sure my listeners will now run and click and enjoy your videos as well. But for now, Professor Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Vitamins, trans fats, GMOs, radiation. What does it all mean? You don't have time to figure all this out on your own. Don't you wish someone could just explain it to you, plain and simple? Oh, hello. Are you tired of not understanding the world around you? Would you like to learn science but can't because of your job or family, or because you just don't want to try very hard? Let me help. I'm Professor Dave, and I explain science stuff. If you want to understand medicine, nutrition, or just about anything else that's sciencey, you're going to have to learn about atoms and molecules. My tutorials are comprehensive enough for students that want to ace their courses, but simple enough for the average Jack or Jill that want to understand how a battery works, what's happening when water boils, or when it's appropriate to use the word quantum. It's easy and fun to watch, and you can test your understanding at the end of each clip. So let's all learn some science and take down those corporate fat cats. Together, the Professor Dave way.
He knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave explains.
Now here's a short report by Jane Hansen, published at the Sunday Telegraph on the 14th of April 2019. Anti-vax naturopath banned after watchdog puts bite on her claims. A naturopath has been prohibited from providing any health services of any description by the Healthcare Complaints Commission. Barbara O'Neill has been under investigation by the health watchdog for making false claims about cancer and vaccinations, and for recommending inappropriate substitutes for infant formula. Ms. O'Neill runs Misty Mountain Retreat near Kempsey and charges as much as $3,100 a week for health retreats and cancer, quote, treatments, end quote. The HCCC launched an investigation after receiving complaints from concerned citizens and registered health practitioners. However, 22,000 supporters have signed a petition appealing the HCCC decision. Ms. O'Neill claims antibiotics cause cancer and, quote, neurotoxins in vaccines have caused an epidemic of ADHD, autism, epilepsy, and cot death, end quote. There is no scientific evidence for such links. And it does not surprise me that 22,000 supporters have signed a petition, undoubtedly an online petition. I wonder if this will be setting some sort of precedent. I'm sure it will. Anyway, that story is available online, and I will link to it in this week's show notes.
Hola, les habla Paula desde la hermosa ciudad de Buenos Aires, en Argentina. Cuando escuchamos podcasts, escuchamos los mismos que escucha todo el mundo, como The Skeptic Zone. Ojalá puedan venir a visitarnos algún día. Los esperamos con nuestras riquísimas comidas locales y hasta podemos ir a bailar un tango. Mientras tanto, sigan disfrutando de su dosis semanal de ciencia y pensamiento racional. ¡Chao!
Well, I'm here in Canberra and I'm talking to Kristine Dun.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a sports psychologist. I currently work at the ACT Academy of Sport, and prior to that I've been working in the Australian and Scottish sporting systems with elite Olympic and Paralympic athletes.
And what made you get into sports psychology?
Oh gosh, I wish I had a great story. Sadly, I just really like sport and I really like people, and I'm not particularly good at sport, so my entry point was via psychology.
So tonight's talk is about elite athletes and sports superstitions. Can you talk a little bit about this phenomenon?
Yeah, sure. So sport is a fairly uncertain thing, right? There's skill involved, there's some luck involved in most sport, and that can lead to some interesting behaviours. If you watch sport, you'll probably see some athletes doing some fairly unusual things, and that's them trying to manage their anxieties around what might happen in the event that they're competing in.
Do you have any personal favourites that you've seen in your time?
Look, Steve Waugh was my hero when I was growing up, and he had a red hanky that he was particularly attached to. It's not an especially exciting sort of superstition, but that's one that I remember. The one that people often bring up most to me is Rafa Nadal. He's got a few behaviours that people will notice. So if you're a tennis watcher, you'll see he's a fidgety player, and he's got a number of behaviours that he will do, including lining up his water bottles and playing with different bits of clothing and getting himself ready to play.
As a scientist, how do you deal with athletes who have these sort of superstitions, knowing that for the most part they're completely harmless but have absolutely no scientific merit?
Yeah, so look, I'm an applied practitioner, so I'm a scientist practitioner. So if they're harmless and they're helpful, so they're at least harmless and they might be helping the athlete perform by perhaps reducing their anxiety, then I usually let it go. But we look at the function of it and whether that superstition or ritual is getting in the way of their behaviour. And a recent example of that would be a football player who was not on the field for kickoff because they had to be the last person out of the changing room. And so then it's dysfunctional, and then I would look at trying to work with that athlete to change their beliefs.
How can a behaviour like that turn as dysfunctional? Has a behaviour ever led to actual harm?
Not that I'm aware of, other than, the psychological pain of not being able to do things that you need to do. But no, there's no harm attached to it. It just means it's going to impact your performance in a negative way.
In your time, how would you rate the quality of Australian sport at the moment?
Oh, jeez. I guess it depends on what sport you're looking at. I think we're in a reasonable position. The worlds I work in is mostly Olympic and Paralympic, and Tokyo's still just under 18 months away. So I think we're in a good position. Our Paralympic team in particular had a good Rio. Our Olympic team didn't have a great Rio. So hopefully we can get on top of that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the Ashes and the Rugby World Cup later this year as well.
All right, well, I look forward to your talk. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming to speak to Canberra Skeptics.
You're very welcome. Looking forward to it.
Aliens are probing people and mutilating cows.
9/11 was an inside job.
Homeopathy cleared up my athlete's foot.
Vaccines cause autism.
Not all psychics are con artists. Mine is definitely real.
We all have friends and family who believe these things and much more. Well, if you're a rational thinker who is tired of arguing on social media and never getting anywhere, we have a solution for you.
Join the Guerrilla Skepticism and Wikipedia team, and we will teach you how to add reliable scientific and skeptical information to the world's #1 source of information, Wikipedia.
We write new articles and improve existing ones. We remove pseudoscience, paranormal, and alt-med claims, substituting the actual facts. And we operate in many languages.
We've already reached tens of millions of people searching for information, but as you can imagine, we can never do enough.
So please, join us. All you need is a PC, a Facebook account, and the desire to help educate the planet. In fact, you'll be educating the world while you sleep.
Contact us at gsowteam@gmail.com. Guerrilla Skepticism. The time is now.
Music by PurplePlanet.com.
And now we continue our series of reports, articles, items of interest from the pages of the Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics. And this week we go back to volume number 34, number 4, from December 2014. Flying Sorcery. Steve Roberts searches the skies for evidence of UFOs and a history of hoaxes. UFO hoaxes? Surprisingly, there aren't many. Take a big bunch of UFO sightings, say over the last 60 years. The bunch will turn out to be much smaller than you would think, given the popularity of the topic. Dismissing those, none, caused by extraterrestrial vehicles and those, many, having a peculiar absence of the expected level of detail and information, we are left with the misinterpretations of genuine phenomena and a few hoaxes. Sadly, for the UFO community, most famous sightings have fallen, sooner or later, into the last category. And amusingly, given the incident, Rendlesham Forest of 1980, for example, can be accepted as a genuine UFO event by some groups and rejected as mundane by others. The next thing that you will notice from your ever-shrinking bunch of UFO incidents is their dates. There'll be nothing much up until 1947, and even then not as much until the two mighty waves in 1952 and 1954, followed by a steady decline, with a brief resurgence in 1977, caused by the release of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And nearly all of these were in the USA. Sightings with associated evidence, typically a photograph but usually with an incoherent story, are even fewer. Just one good photo with a plausible story, explaining, for example, why nobody else took the same photo, would still be enough to command serious attention. Long ago, cameras were exotic toys, and it was not very common for an individual to own one, or if you did, to waste the expensive film and development until about the 1950s. The Cottingley Fairies of 1917 were taken with roughly 3 by 4 inch glass plates that ruled out handheld use and required the subject to pose for a second or so, but were nevertheless usable by complete amateurs. It was parental disapproval that stopped the girls taking more pictures. Some UFOs predate camera ownership, of course, but not many. In 1897, there was a wave of phantom airship sightings, helped along by pranksters releasing hot air balloons with fires under them. This is an old chestnut, but it was still fooling people in 2012 in Warrnambool, Victoria. In like vein, the Wisconsin UFO Club used to meet in the lakeside pub, where they could enjoy beer, hamburgers and pizza and tell yarns while gazing at the view over the lake. Some locals thought it would be charitable to provide balloon-borne UFOs for them to look at and photograph. By the 1950s, reasonably priced camera film was in widespread use, and many hobbyists were developing their own negatives and prints. Some tricks were easy to do in the darkroom, resulting in prints differing from the negatives and hence from reality. George Adamski couldn't resist casting shadows in his printing process when he wasn't setting up vacuum cleaners and tennis balls to bolster his UFO stories. The quality of these and similar pictures now, and then actually, is truly appalling. Fuzzy focus and weird framing required UFO complainants to plead the excuse that they couldn't get the camera ready, even during incidents when there clearly would have been plenty of time to make a better job. Further excuses had to be advanced as to how a UFO could be badly photographed, but no attempt made to snap the actual aliens that came out of it. Very many non-hoax UFO photographs have this fuzzy quality, and there is a reason for this, and why UFO events are always at the edge of detection. If the UFO was any further away from being observed or photographed, we wouldn't see it at all. And if it was closer, we'd see the fine details that would give away its identity. It follows that UFO hoax photographs must all be slightly out of focus, and it is a courageous hoaxer indeed who sharply defines his UFO. Billy Meyer, for example, has produced some sharp UFO pictures, but now the catch is that their context is so far from what he claims they show that you can't understand what the objects really are, usually buttons. After a couple of decades of UFO silliness, the US government finally commissioned the Condon Report to examine the phenomena and hopefully dismiss it, allowing Americans to divert their attention to education, citizenship, wars, etc. Amongst the incidents this report admitted it could not explain were the McMinnville photographs of 1950, which showed a tilted saucer-shaped craft viewed from a farmland. Years later, and, of course, showing the superiority of private enterprise over wasteful and clumsy government processes, private researchers would actually visit that farmyard and deduce the camera position held, and thus show that the pictures had been carefully framed, not taken in haste as in the covering story. And a photograph appeared of the farmer's truck whose tilted side mirror so very closely, resembled that UFO. So that one flew away. But nonetheless, 37 years later, Ed Walters took a series of photographs over a period of some months at Gulf Breeze, Florida. These better quality but still fuzzy snaps were convincing to many. Money began to flow in. And indeed, so convincing were they to Ed himself that he felt the need to make a completely accurate scale model of the UFO and hide it in the attic of his house. A hoaxed picture is worth 1,000 hoaxed words, so the UFO stories with pictures were always the best received and believed. But one by one, the guilt-ridden photographers of the 1950s and 1960s owned up, until finally there was only one photo left that had any credibility, that taken by the 13-year-old Stephen Derbyshire in 1954. This showed a UFO of similar design and proportions to George Adamski's, hovering out of focus but neatly placed just above a hedge, and again of an appalling quality. But, oh joy of joys, this one was in Britain, and thus better than the American ones. It is widely claimed that a lad so young would not or could not tell porkies about such a picture, and for decades it commanded the respect of the UFO fans. Derbyshire was even interviewed at Buckingham Palace. Yes, he even deceived the Queen's husband. Sometimes a story gets so big you can't stop it. But years later, and after much stress, he fessed up, and this UFO flew away too. Most hoaxes were done, quote, just for a laugh, end quote, and got out of hand, but some were cynical exploitation. The most wonderful of these latter is the Alien Autopsy film bought in 1995 by Ray Santilli. He also bought some still photographs, but chose not to release those as they showed earthly detail better left fuzzy. The alien body was made of rubber, plus some meat parts supplied by C.S. Crosby Wholesale Butchers of Smithfield Meat Market. They should have sponsored the film. But usually it's attention rather than money that is sought. Mexico is awash with UFO videos from obscure people. The dream-based Ninth Planet and Encounter, Kelly Cahill, stories made a few bob, and moreover, they were Australian. Nowadays, of course, not only are cameras universally owned and carried about, which has completely killed off the UFO stories, but quadcopters and similar drones have also come well within amateur reach. Fortunately, people are more aware than they were. Well, I hope so. And that was Flying Sorcery by Steve Roberts, and you can read that for yourself in Volume 34, Number 4 of the Skeptic Magazine from December 2014 at skeptics.com.au.
Are you tired of going out and not being able to find the kind of music that you like to dance to? Like that? Well, you need to come to Maynard's Loveshack at the Red Bar upstairs at 36 Glebe Point Road in Glebe in Sydney. We'll be going crazy there as I play the kind of music you ought to dance to. Stuff like this.
Sometimes I feel I've got to.
Stuff like this.
The only way is up.
Stuff I really like this. But if you want to, you can always dance to the kind of stuff you like. That's Maynard's Loveshack. More details on the very, very front page of Maynard.com.au. Can skeptics dance? I know they can drink. Well, can skeptics dance? I don't know. I'm full of incertitude. What's that mean? Did Saunders write that? Incertitude? Is that something rude? Maynard's Loveshack, 8 midnight 36 upstairs at the Red Bar, Glebe Point Road in Glebe. See you there, and oh, look, I might even play this.
I got us on a mountain top.
That's Maynard's Loveshack, Saturday, 4th of May. See you there in the Loveshack.
And Venus was her name.
Well, we're here in the Madame Frou Frou Cafe in Glebe. Maynard, what can you say?
Well, you haven't been here for a while. You've been overseas doing really interesting, sceptical things overseas, but right now you're busy doing coffee.
I'm trying. Yes, I've got a lovely Madame Frou Frou coffee in front of me. And while I was away, I heard your Loveshack night was a big success.
It was a roaring medium average success. That is certainly true. It was a big day because I had to set everything up there. It's not usually a club that they DJ at, so it was good. And we're doing it again on the 4th, which will be a lot of fun. And there's even a total 4-hour recording of the night for Patreons only of Planet Maynard, which is basically the entire recording of the whole night, which you can just listen to at home. And we've had a few people, including the Midnight Skeptic.
The what? The Midnight Skeptic?
The Midnight Skeptic, who's one of my patrons. He's got his own show. He's got his own skeptical show. And he said he liked it. So if the Midnight Skeptic likes it, I don't know what that means.
I don't know what it means either. But folks, if you're in Sydney and you want to help support Maynard, because Maynard does podcasts and he's also, of course, here on the Skeptic Zone, why not go along to Maynard's Loveshack number 2 on the 4th of May? Details at maynard.com.au as our toast and muesli arrives. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and another big thank you to all those people who contribute weekly or monthly or whatever the case may be to the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal at skepticzone.tv. Your contribution means the show keeps going. You could say that this week's Skeptic Zone was brought to you by you, the people who do contribute. And for everybody else, well, there's the hint. Coming up on next week's show, we're going to bring you an interview with Jessica Singer. Jessica, a long-time committee member of the Australian Skeptics here in Sydney, recently went to the UK and went to Skeptics in the Pub in London. She's going to be telling us about that. And speaking of Skeptics in the Pub, don't forget Skeptics in the Pub in Sydney, first Thursday of the month. And next month, on the 2nd, yes, I think it's the 2nd of May, there'll be a talk by a surfing scientist, Dr. Rip, as he's known, Rob Brander. Rob Brander is a professor and surf scientist in the School of Biological, Earth and Environmental Sciences at the University of New South Wales. He's also known as Dr. Rip. Now that's going to be an interesting night. I should be there with my microphone and Maynard as well to do interviews as normal. And just a couple of days after that we have the Australian Skeptics Vaccination Clinic here in Sydney. More information at skeptics.com.au. And after the vaccination clinic, that evening we have Maynard's Loveshack number 2. Maynard, of course, one of the top DJs in Sydney. And if you'd like to support Maynard, then head along to Loveshack number 2. I'll see you there. But for this week, with those funny birds now flown away outside the window, isn't that typical? Or maybe that's confirmation bias. Of course, you hear planes and loud birds when you're trying to do something, but as soon as you want to hear them, they go away. I'm going to ponder that all week. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter @Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.